Hi friends, this is Reverend Mark Anders, and the title of my channel is Finding Hope in Mental Illness. Most of you may know from watching my early videos, I'm an ordained minister, former pastor, itinerant speaker now, but I am one also who has suffered from mental illness throughout my life. And if you go back and look over my videos, there's actually a playlist in my videos on my channel, one playlist of 3 videos which gives a record of the 3 major episodes I've had in my life. One at age 17, one at age 24, and another one, the most recent one, in 1995. So I'm coming to you as someone who's a sympathizer, someone who knows what it's like to suffer from real mental illness. I'm a Christian man. I'm a born-again Christian, glad and I rejoice that I've been saved. And it actually came about during one of my major episodes that I became a Christian. I'm very thankful that that happened, because as I'll tell you again and again throughout my videos off and on, that you're always better off when you're dealing with mental illness if you have God in your life. And God has made a big difference for me. Thank God that He's there for us. But He wants to help us, and He can be in your life as well. And I hope that you will be thinking about that and maybe send me an email if you want to know more about that. But I can tell you that it has helped me immensely in my battle against, in my case, clinical depression, chronic clinical depression. But I want to make something clear here on this particular video about mental illness. Would it be true to say that all mental illness, every case that someone thinks they have mental illness, is always true? That is mental illness real in every case? And I have to say, it's not for me to judge which cases it is and which cases it isn't, but I think I'm safe in saying that not all mental illness is really what I'm referring to as mental illness, and I will get to the definition of that in a little bit. All of us feel down at times. We have things that happen in our life, catastrophes. We lose a death of a loved one. We suffer grief going through that. Maybe we've been, maybe our boyfriend or our girlfriend has broke up with us, or something along those lines, or another friend has betrayed you. You've had something happen tragic in your life. It may not be a tragedy to everybody, but to you it is, and it's important. Maybe you're having a problem getting along with your parents, or maybe you're having a problem getting along with your kids, and it causes you stress and worry. Does that mean that you automatically have mental illness? Not necessarily. What I want to do in this video is try to divide for you between what is real mental illness and what is not. As I've said, I'm no doctor, but I have one advantage over doctors that have never dealt with this in the real, and that is that I know what it's like. I know what it means to have actually be dealing with it and the circumstances around it. And I know that in the past, in my life, I've had problems and difficulties, tragedies, and things that came up, but they never affected me like real mental illness. And I'll speak about that. Everything in your life does not mean you're mentally ill. Everything going on in your life does not mean you are mentally ill. Sometimes just circumstances improve, your life changes, things start going better for you, or enough time passes by and the wound is healed, and you find yourself feeling better and moving on back with your life again. But when you're talking about mental illness, you're talking about something totally different. It's medical. It's medical. There might have been a time in my life when I would have disputed with that and said, really, it's just what we need to get our minds right and have our minds focused on the right kinds of things, and we'll never be depressed. That would be wonderful if it were true. There is something called real mental illness. Real mental illness involves a biochemical change in your brain. a chemical imbalance that happens between the neurons in your brain, the cells in your brain. And it's the only thing that helped explain it to me as what I was going through. Real mental illness is totally different. It doesn't need an event to trigger it. I've mentioned that in one of my other videos. In fact, in every case where I've gone through had the onset of a new episode of mental illness, everything was going great. I'd have a reason in the world to look forward to everything. I was happy. I was enjoying life. And all of a sudden, out of the blue, for no apparent reason, I was hit with this. I can remember a man years ago. One of the institutions I went to for education was Fruitland Baptist Bible Institute. And I was introduced to a man there that came to speak one day, a man by the name of Dr. Ron Dunn. Ron told us about his son. I think he was 18 at the time, the son was, had taken his own life. Now, Ron didn't know anything really about mental illness at that time. He had never had anything himself like that. But obviously it was a tragedy and very difficult, very hard. And it broke his heart and his wife as well. But one time, Ron was one that went and spoke in various places. He was always invited to speak all over the country, in fact, all over the world. And he said sometime after his son committed suicide, that he was going to speak at a meeting he had been invited to. He walked in the church building. He went down and sat on the front pew waiting for the service to start. And he said, as I sat there, all of a sudden something came over me and put me in a tailspin. He said, I couldn't believe it was happening. He said, I was even not sure whether or not I wanted to go ahead and preach. I mean, it completely caught me off guard. He had never experienced it before. He decided to go ahead and preach at the meeting. But I can guarantee you this, that the man that walked out of that building was not the same one that came in. Everything had changed. One thing that changes when you have real mental illness is your whole perception of things. Everything turns dark. Everything is like you're looking at yourself in reality from the outside and not from the inside. You're not connected. I was not connected with anything in my past, just in the recent past, just in the last hour or two. But when this happened, that's what a devastating effect it has. And Ron spent his life dealing off and on. He called it his little friend. I'm hesitant to call it a little friend because it hasn't been much of a friend to me. But he was saying that tongue-in-cheek, and I understood, what he was talking about. When you have real mental illness, there are times when it can cause panic with you. You begin to realize that you cannot control what's going on with your mind. And when you realize you can't control it, you feel trapped. You feel trapped in a body you cannot get out of. And I want to tell you, and I'm telling you, if you've ever had mental illness, you realize one thing right up front. You do not reason with mental illness. Because of the things that are going on in the nerves with your mind and everything, signals are not being sent properly. They're not being sent smoothly from cell to cell because of things that are missing in the chemistry of your body that are needed to help cause those cells to and messages to communicate with one another smoothly, fluently. And you realize that when that is going on with you, it's like everything is falling apart. And when you come to a place where you don't feel like you can reason with the things going on in your mind, and what I mean by that is that your mind, everything about your body is telling you something, that you're bad, that you're condemned, that you feel guilty, you feel down, for no apparent reason. For no apparent reason. And you feel trapped, and it can cause panic. And my friend, I'll tell you, I'm convinced that that's at the point where many people decide it would be better to leave this world than to remain in it. I have nothing but sympathy for you there because I have been there. It's terrible. Let's not make any bones about it. When it's real, it has an effect on you you cannot control. And if you're one of those who has had such an experience in your own life, that's when you know that something may be really wrong, seriously wrong, medically with you. When mental illness is real, friend, you need to see a doctor, a psychiatrist. A psychiatrist is a medical doctor. They deal with medications. They can prescribe for you to help you deal with the onset of this problem. If you go to a psychologist, you can tell him about your problems and he'll tell you don't have anything to worry about, and then you can walk out of there feeling the way you did when you came in. But if you feel like I've just said and you've dealt with the symptoms I've just mentioned, and you're having a real crisis that you can't control in your life, I advise you to go to a psychiatrist, a medical doctor who can prescribe medication and work with you. Now, people are going to say, oh, you're going to see a shrink now, huh? Well, you've heard me talk before about people that make statements like that. They just don't know what they're talking about. They need to just be thankful that they don't have to deal with it. But if you do have to deal with it, there's nothing weak about seeking a psychiatrist. My friend, when you go to the doctor for any other illness, don't you get medication? You go with the flu, you go with an upper respiratory infection, you go to the doctor, he gives you medicine, and you take it, right? So you can get better. This is the same thing. And psychiatrists don't prescribe medicines that are going to give you an upper. They give you that's going to stimulate you and give you energy like a speed or something. It's nothing like that whatsoever. There are certain chemicals in your body that are essential to pass and communicate messages from one cell in your brain to the next one. And when you have a depletion of those chemicals, you're going to have the likelihood of a problem with a mental illness of some sort. Now, mental illnesses are various. They are various. In my case, it's been clinical chronic depression and OCD. I'll talk more about that in a later video. But there are other things, some even worse. Schizophrenia, anorexia, OCD, of course, other kinds of illness that are real as well. And I don't know exactly whether what I'm saying is true, but I think I can say that there's one common element in most of these illnesses, and that is that your mind is telling you something that is not true. You look at it and you see that it's not true. Somebody can prove it to you, can show it to you, demonstrate it for you. But you wonder, I cannot change what's going on in my mind. I can't do anything with it. It's out of my control. It's still causing me to feel down. It doesn't mean that what they're saying isn't true, or whatever you come upon about the circumstances is not true. But your brain and your mind are telling you things that keep you in this mood of darkness, and you really cannot control or reason with it at all. It's nothing to be ashamed of. It's the number one leading cause of disability in the world, mental illness. And friend, I know you don't want to spend the rest of your life, just as I didn't want to spend the rest of my life, having to battle with it and not having any hope of having a better life once again. I recommend God in your life, more specifically the Lord Jesus Christ. God rescued me in my period of depression. I was going through terrible times. I didn't know if I was going to make it. I was scared to death, fragile, a nervous wreck. But God helped me to find Him in that. And yes, I did have another occurrence later on after I found God, but I was much better prepared to deal with it. I still take medicine. I still have to take medicine for prevention. And you may have to take it as well. You may not deal with it as long at a time as some people do. Sometimes a person can have a case of depression or another type of illness, and it might last 2 or 3 months and be gone. In more chronic cases like my own, talking up to 2 years or more at a time. But I'm still here today, and I've said before, as I've said before, you are as well. God is a faithful God. He loves us, and He wants to help us using science and medicine, along with our own input, along with our own seeking to follow Him and know that He is there always to comfort and to help us as well. So friend, do you have mental illness or not? It's not for me to determine. I couldn't even take, if you told me all the circumstances of your life met the criteria of not having mental illness, I would still hold out that there's a possibility that you may. You may. When something doesn't go away, you may very well. My advice is don't wait. Get to the bottom of it. Get to a doctor. Let him talk with you. Be encouraged. You need hope in mental illness, and that's part of what my channel is about. So thanks once more for coming by here. Send me an email. Share my videos if you will. There are people out there who need to hear things like this. My part is not so much technical as it is pastoral. I feel the need to be one who comforts and encourages people who are dealing with it, as opposed to telling them exactly how it works and what it's all about, the medical side of it. But it is real. When it is real, it's very real. But there's help out there to be found. So thank you again for coming back to my channel. I always appreciate you coming by and the comments you make. And I hope you'll come back for my next video. I'll deal with some more things that I feel are relevant to those of us who suffer with mental illness. So may God bless you.